Hi, welcome to the Geekery Barn. This is Otaku Mom talking to you about Captain Marvel. I just got back from seeing the movie with my son and my husband, and so I'm going to start off by saying that on this film that this isn't in the lineup, but I just thought of it as of now, and that is that the idea of this being a complete SJW movie, I think they probably oversold that a little bit. I'll talk a little more about that later, but I think they might have oversold that a little bit. But I'll explain more when we get to that part of it. So let's start off with the characters. Okay. And just to let you know, I'm not gonna do any spoil. I'm gonna try not to do any spoilers on the film, except maybe when we get to Goose the Cat. Only because I think that's one that I think parents should know about before taking their children to see that one. So that one I am gonna spoil about Goose when we get down there. But on all the other things, I'm not going to. I'm gonna try to avoid spoilers. Okay, so you have. So let's start off with the most contentious of the characters in this movie, and that is Captain Marvel, played by Brie Larson. Okay, now I did not see her completely as an emotionless robot, as some of the other reviewers are describing. But I also didn't see some of the other things that some of the other reviewers were seeing either. So, like, for example, I didn't see her as, if anything, she wasn't exactly a robot, but she was. Some of the lines in regards to her didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Because you have these other Kree characters telling her that her emotions are getting in the way of her being great, and she could be great if she got rid of all of her emotions and all that. And I'd be watching like, what the heck are you talking about? And because a lot of the character of Captain Marvel, of Brie Larson's character Carol Danvers, who becomes Captain Marvel. Like I said, she's not a complete emotionless robot, but she's also not really exhibiting the emotion that would constitute all these other characters telling her she needs to keep it in check. Okay, so I mean, I thought she was okay. As Captain Marvel, I'm hoping that going forward that it's a function of whoever's directing her. Because I haven't seen any other films she's ever been. I don't think I've seen any other films she's been in. But she's won an Oscar, so she can act. But I think somewhere along the line she may not have been a good fit for Captain Marvel. For her character, so either she needs to either step up her game in other films, or they need to get somebody who could get her better presence. I mean, I don't think she's terrible, but probably not the best fit for the character. And then there's Samuel Jackson as Nick Fury. Oh, good as always in his role. Him and Brie Larson. Some people said they were having good chemistry. Some said they had like no chemistry. So it's kind of like gone both ways. My personal feeling is that they had a fairly good rapport between the two of them, and that they kind of relied on each other to help each other out. And and which is good, because that was actually one of the complaints I had about the Ghostbusters movie. Is that they relied too much on the female characters in the film to hold the weight of the shoulders of the film, and and they treated all the guys as stupid in that film. Whereas in this film, they don't do that, which is good. I did like that part of it. That was one of the big differences for me between Ghostbusters and this. Because some people were talking about this being Ghostbustered, but but this film actually has a lot. Has a lot of good rapport between her and Nick Fury. So there was a lot of good chemistry there. Then you have Ben Mendelsohn as the Skrull leader, the leader of the bad guys, who he gave a really good performance in this film. And then when we get to and then does an even better job when we get to the twist of the film, which I'm not going to go into spoilers about it. We get into the twist of the film of the characters. So his character, he did a really good job as always. Because he's been in other films, and I think I've seen him in other films, and anytime he's really good at playing bad guys. So he did a really good job here, and as the Skrull leader. And then you have Jude Law, who plays the Kree leader. And his performance was okay. He was very stoic, very stoic character. He's a Kree leader. He's also become sort of Carol's mentor in the film. And he does a fairly good job. I mean, they're all doing a fairly good job for a script that probably could have been better. And, there's a lot of things about this film that could have been better. Because one of the, so let's talk about some of the other characters here. So, you have Clark Gregg as Coulson, who's not that much in the movie, but when he's on the screen, he's pretty good. And then we have Goose the Cat, who they did a really good job with not putting him in the movie too much. He's kind of like the comic relief throughout the film. And I'm going to get into a little more of a spoilery description of him a little later in this. But his character is just his Goose the Cat is actually one of the better parts of the film, and about his introduction. So they did a really good job. They did a really good job with the character with the Goose the Cat. So, and then we have Annette Bening, who you're seeing on the screen right now, who plays a scientist on Earth who was creating something on. I'm not going to go into too much spoiler on her too, but she played a scientist on Earth that the bad guys are trying to get. So, her character is so Annette Bening did what best she could with this, and the movie is. So all the characters were fairly good. Like I said, I think Brie's character was kind of maybe a little bit miscast. I don't know if they're planning on doing more with her, or giving her a better director for the later films. Because it just seemed like there were aspects that were there were aspects of the film that, as far as the characters go, that might have been a little underdeveloped in some cases, maybe, or maybe just kind of thrown in because of the fact that this movie is set in the 1990s, like maybe mid-90s, and So mid-90s, because the big thing is that when she crashes on Earth, she crashes through a blockbuster. That's not a spoiler. That's actually in the trailers. And there's like a whole bunch of different 90s references throughout the film. And one of those being that there is a scene on a train where, again, sadly, the obligatory Stanley. Not that it's sad that he's in the movie, but just sad because he passed away a while ago. But I guess Kevin Feige had confirmed that Stan Lee had filmed a bunch of cameos before he passed away, and this was one of them. There's a cameo in them of him in the movie. That it's not really a spoiler so much as to what he's doing in there. But if you ever read Kevin Smith's feed, he actually mentions it in the film, and I guess he blubbered over the reference that was made. So if you want to see it, I'll let you. If you're interested, go read Kevin Smith's Twitter feed because he mentions it in there. So anyway, so the setting of the film is in the 90s. A whole bunch of 90s references. There's even a 90s like soundtrack to it. So there's a bunch of 90s songs that are in the film. She's wearing, she's like, at some point, different point, she's wearing a Guns N' Roses t-shirt and Nine Inch Nails t-shirt. Somebody had mentioned about at that point in the 90s, Guns N' Roses would have been past their prime, at that point, but in the scene where she's wearing the Guns N' Roses t-shirt, it's actually it's actually a flashback to her past. And so it could have taken place it sounds like that was taking place in a different year. So anyway, so there's a lot of the 90s music, and some of the music was great as to how they used it, and then there were times where it was kind of a little too, how would I put this? Something a little too on the nose. So like in one of the big fight scenes, in the huge big fight scene with towards the end, down on the soundtrack you hear the song No Doubt's Just a Girl, and probably a little too on the nose in that scene. It just didn't really fit too well. That was probably a little too on the nose for that scene. But I mean, a lot of the other music was great. The setting was okay because they had it in space, they had it on Earth, and it was and I had it in both places. And there are parts of the movie that are kind of like you're back here, now you're forward here, and kind of goes back and forth as far as time, because she's trying to piece together her memories and discovering who she is. And so that's a lot of her arc, is that she's trying to discover. She's trying to figure out who she is, because she always thought she was a Kree, but it turned out she was actually obviously it turns out she was, because this is in the trailers too, is that she was actually originally a fighter pilot on Earth, and so now she's trying to figure out who she actually is and what happened. So just to get into the next part of this I want to talk about is Goose the Cat. Now I'm going to put this out there. Spoiler alert, if you want to skip ahead, go ahead. This is only a brief thing. Only because I think parents would... this is only a brief thing because I think only parents would be interested in this part of it. Mostly because it was one thing I was interested in, because we took my 10-year-old son to go see it. And you might have heard a cat in the background here. Because cats don't pay attention when you're filming. So Goose the Cat in the film is actually... spoiler alert. Okay, spoiler. Okay, so Goose the Cat in the film is not really a cat. He is a creature that is known as a Flerken. Okay. Now, the reason why I wanted to know ahead of time about this is because one of the aspects of the Flerken is that they have tentacles that come out of their mouths. And watching the movie, I wanted to see, I was trying to figure out whether that would be too scary for my son. Because, like I say, he's 10 years old, so this is our first time actually taking him to a Marvel movie in the theater. Because we've started showing him the movies at home. So we decided this time we're going to take him to the theater to go see it. And so if you've heard about the fact that he's a Flerken and he's got tentacles coming out of his mouth, don't worry, it's played for laughs. It's played for laughs. It doesn't look like overly scary. They just kind of come out of his mouth and just kind of either eat people or eat different things and whatnot. And he swallows them. And they're like, okay. So yes, that was one of the funnier aspects of it. In regards to that, but there was also some retconning involving the cat too. If you've ever watched, I forgot which movie had this line, but in one of the movies, Nick Fury makes a mention that the last time he trusted somebody, he lost an eye. Now, they've kind of retconned that to Captain Marvel, so that the reason why he lost his eye is because of the Flerken, is because of Goose. So Goose is the reason why he lost his eye. So yeah. And so that was sort of some interesting retconning. And some people online, if you go online, read some of the reviews, they're like, oh, that is so stupid. Why would he lose it? That is so stupid. He just scratched his eye and lost his eye and because of the cat. And but I think that line kind of makes sense when you think about it, because the last time he trusted somebody, he lost an eye. At the time, he just thought of the cat as just a normal cat. Well, not a normal cat at this point. But he thought of the cat as his friend, as it were. And he thought of the cat as his quote-unquote friend. And the cat scratched him. So that's how he lost his eye. He trusted something and it lost his eye. So, and that was just some interesting retconning right there. And as another piece of another little retcon too that I'm not going to, because that's another spoiler in the film. But so yeah, so that's about Goose. So if you'd heard that he was a Flerken and that he had tentacles coming out of his mouth, and you're worried about taking kids to see those, it's played more for laughs. So it's not that big of a deal. My son actually laughed when he saw the tentacles coming out. So yeah, so just to give you a heads up, if you're worried about the part, don't be overly worried. It's played completely for laughs. So one of the big things about this is the idea of whether Captain Marvel is a Mary Sue in this film. And I would argue yes to a point. Now, in the film, she doesn't really have any flaws per se. Okay? No visible flaws. She definitely has a clear arc, though, because her arc is basically going from point A is basically going. She's a Kree. She's a very powerful Kree. She can shoot stuff out of her hands, and when she starts getting these memories back, she starts getting some of her memories back. Now she's on a journey to figure out who she is, and and what her purpose is and what's happened to her. So she does have this arc of trying to figure out who she is. But she does have some Mary Sue aspects to her. In that she is a very powerful character. Almost unbeatable. She is. They've been talking about her being like one of the most powerful characters in the MCU, going towards heading into Phase 4, and she is an incredibly powerful character power wise. Okay. And going into the MCU, I think it'll be hard to justify her in a lot of movies because of the fact that she could just come in and swoop and shoot somebody and they're gone. That's how powerful she is. So she doesn't have any like obvious flaws to her. She could sweep in and fix everything. And I think that's what a lot of people are worried about going into Endgame next month, is that they're worried about Captain Marvel basically just saving the day for everybody. Now, the theory right now in Endgame is that this is going to be using time travel to as the key as to how they're going to beat Thanos in Endgame. I mean, we'll find out when the movie comes out next month, but that's the key right there. Is that I think now people are concerned that she's just going to come sweep in, and I think I mentioned this on one of my podcasts that the talk is that there's actually two cuts of the film. One, if Captain Marvel ends up being a huge hit, she's going to play a more pivotal role. If it doesn't end up being a huge hit, her role is going to be reduced in the film. And they're going to give more of what she was going to do to other characters. So, which would be smart, because right now the audience reaction on this film is, I think when I looked on Rotten Tomatoes, I think it was still at like 53%, 53% audience reaction with the 71% on the critic reaction, which is so-so for a Marvel film. It's still higher than some of the other products, but it's not it's not an overly good showing for the film going into Endgame. So we will see what their role of Brie Larson and Captain Marvel is going to be going into the film. Now, also going on this weekend is that a lot of those who are basically protesting the film are talking about telling people go see Alita instead. Now, there's some big differences between Alita and Captain Marvel in regards to the characters. Whereas, like I said, the Captain Marvel character probably not as developed as character-wise as Alita is. She's got very few flaws. She's got very few stakes, and she's like all powerful. She's like an all powerful character. She's very hard to beat. And with the lack of flaws, it kind of makes it hard for people to connect to her character. Whereas with Alita, she's got a lot of flaws that people can connect to. And she's a cyborg. She's hard-headed. She's very stubborn. But she's also a very powerful character, too. But she also is not totally indestructible. And which is a benefit, is that she has weaknesses. Captain Marvel doesn't really have weaknesses. And that can be a problem for the character going forward. And it could be an issue when they start making more movies with Captain Marvel in them, as to whether she's going to be constantly this Deus Ex Machina type character, where the other characters are on the brink, and then she comes in and swoops and saves the day. And that kind of character can be tiring after a while. I mean, it's worked in very few films. Star Wars being one of them, the original Star Wars, when they thought all was lost, and all of a sudden Han Solo came in and saved the day. And it worked in that film, but it doesn't work all the time. And you have to think about that when you're creating these characters, as to whether it's going to work or not. And so the concern is that Captain Marvel is going to be this Deus Ex Machina type character, where she's just going to come in and save the day all the time. Whereas in Alita, she has flaws, she has feelings, she has all this other stuff. She has all these weaknesses, but she also has a lot of strengths too. And she's a strong character. She knows a particular type of martial arts. She cares about her father, because she's a cyborg. So her father, that's why I put it in quotes. And she cares about those around her, and like I said, she's also stubborn, and is also a character who all the time is ready to fight despite her own flaw, but despite her own feelings. She's always ready for a fight when needed. And I think that's the big difference between Captain Marvel and Alita, is that you have a character with like no flaws whatsoever and almost no emotion, and whereas Alita is very expressive, she's got a lot of flaws, but she tries to overcome them. Now the other thing too is that those who do not like, those who are championing Captain Marvel, I think there was a tweet online that I saw earlier, where there was a link to an article from one of the writers of Captain Marvel saying they're going to talk about this film in women's studies classes and write papers about it. It's like, no, they're not, because this is the first. This is not the first film that's been made that has a female protagonist or has a female superhero. It's like, did they forget about Wonder Woman? And so let's talk about this. So Wonder Woman. So is Captain Marvel in the same league as Wonder Woman? Not even in the slightest. Wonder Woman is an excellent film. Let's look at the character. She's beautiful. She's tough. She's strong. She's got great abilities. But she also has her own weaknesses. She's a character who is very stubborn. She's very much fish out of water in her own way. So is Captain Marvel too, but she's very much she's very stubborn. She's also stubborn. I think I mentioned that, and sometimes has a hard time understanding why things happen the way they do. So, for example, and I'm going to spoil a movie that's been out for a few years, but I got to talk about this point. So, for example, after the No Man's Land scene, they've saved the village, and they're all celebrating, but then they get gassed. And of course, with her ability, she's able to survive the gas, but she has a hard time understanding why it happened, and she has that humanity to her that that just has a hard time understanding why they didn't win. She doesn't understand the real nature of war. And because in her mind, the only reason people are fighting is because of Ares. That's her big thing through the movie is it's Ares' fault, it's Ares' fault. Ares is the only one that's doing this. Ares is the issue. And she has a hard time understanding that war is not necessarily because of what's is not because of a god all the time. It's almost part of human nature, unfortunately, is that us constantly being at war. So yeah, I mean, Captain Marvel is definitely not in the same league as Wonder Woman. Okay. And it's I mean, it's a good diversion. It's like a little appetizer before going into Endgame, so you know exactly who Carol Danvers is, and who this Captain Marvel character is. But but definitely not in the same league as Wonder Woman. So the big thing now is, should you see Captain Marvel or not? That is entirely up to you. Now, earlier I said SJWs would actually be kind of angry about this film. Well, they should be. And I'll explain why here is that a lot of, I mean, they championed it as this big rah-rah girl power feminist type film, and it's not that at all. Well, there is a little bit here and there, but it's not like completely in your face about it. I mean, like I said, the little thing with excuse me, the little thing with just a girl being little on the nose, that was a little much. And there's also a scene where she's outside a bar and a motorcycle guy sees her with a map or something and tells her to smile, that kind of thing, and those kinds of things. But for the most part, it's not as feminist-centric as I thought it might be going into it, just based on how they were promoting this film. So if you're worried about the feminist stuff that you've been hearing about online and all that, it's not as feminist-centric as they made it out to be. Because she still needs help every once in a while from men. And, which is not a bad thing, because we can use help from everybody. I tell my son all the time, if you need help, just ask. So, and it's not bad. If there are men there and she needs their help, she needs their help. That's all. So, like I said, and I'm also glad that they didn't make all the men like totally stupid like they did in Ghostbusters 2016, because that would have just completely killed it for me. So anyway, so should you go see this film? And that's entirely up to you. I thought it was okay. It's a good little appetizer if you're going to plan to go see Endgame, just so you kind of get an idea of who Carol Danvers is. Just expect going in, it's not as feminist as the pre-press stuff makes it out to be. I mean, the little feminist touches here and there, but not for the most part, not really. And you got to also remember they were aiming this at a mainstream audience, so I think if they had so much of it, I think they might dial it back a bit. So, but I don't think this is going to be studied for feminist papers. There have been other female superhero films out there, and I don't think that, I don't even know if this is actually going to be remembered. I don't even know if I'm going to remember it in a week. But it's a popcorn movie. It's a diversion. So watch it, forget about it, and then wait for Endgame. so that's my take on it. So if you like this new format, let me know. Give me a like, subscribe in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.